Hi there, this is Lee. This is video number 2 in my beginner Inkscape tutorial series. So now we're just going to pick up where we left off. And I've got one thing that kind of goes in with the last lesson. And a lot of times people will say, I tried to draw a rectangle or a circle, but nothing was there. So let's see what might be the problem. Now look here, I've clicked on the square tool. I'm going to click and drag. Oh, there's an outline, but there's no square. Where's my square? Let me draw another and another. Oh, why is it not working? My Inkscape's broken. Well, let's do this. Click and drag to select all of these things that we think we drew. Well, there's something there. What happened is, if we look over at the fill panel, they have no fill and they have no stroke. All I have to do is add. I've got all of those selected. I can click down here. Now I can see my squares. So sometimes if your Inkscape was set, like if your tool was set somehow by default to have no fill and no stroke, it's going to look like nothing happened, but you did draw something. You just have to turn it visible. So I'm just deleting all those. Okay, so now back where we were. Now we're going to move on to the circle tool. Okay, so I've clicked on the circle tool. Just click and drag. Whoops, that's there from when I was playing around earlier. Let me just get that back to 0. Okay, normally when you open your circle tool, you will just draw an oval. You can draw tall ovals, skinny. If you want to draw a perfect circle, hold down the Shift and Control before you start to click and drag, and that will help you get a perfect circle. Same thing goes for rectangles. If I'm on the rectangle tool, normally, I've got it. Let me show you this while I'm at it. If I want to reset my default color for a particular tool, I can double click on that tool over in the toolbar and this menu pops up. I can say use this tool's own style, which I had set to transparent fill and transparent stroke just to show you that. I can change it to take from selection. This is selected right now, this yellow rectangle. Take from selection. That changes my fill to yellow and my stroke to none. Okay. If I wanted to change it to something different, I could select this object here and say take from selection. That's going to draw, my next rectangle will have a red fill and a black stroke. Okay, so as I was saying, if you hold down Shift and Control with your circle tool, you will make a perfect circle. If you do that with the rectangle tool, hold down Shift and Control, click and drag, and it will help you to make a perfect square. It doesn't necessarily make a perfect square because you can see it gives a particular ratio, but if you click and drag pretty much at a 45-degree angle, it's going to give you a perfect square. All right. Then again with the circle, you can do all of the same things I showed you with the rectangle. If you open your fill panel, let's pretend it was closed. So Control Shift F. Now I can do all the same things here. I can change the fill, I can change the stroke, I can change the stroke style if I want to. All right. So now we have learned how to make squares, circles, rectangles, odd shapes like this. You can also, with the circle, it's similar to the rectangle in that it is a special object. If that is selected and I look down here, it says circle. Okay. That's if I click on one of these, it tells me that is an ellipse or an oval. So again, if I click on the node tool, like I showed you with the rectangle, you can see that it's got a special set of, they're not really nodes, but they're handles. So these square ones, similar to the rectangle, are going to change the height and width. This one does some funky stuff. Okay, we won't mess with that one too much right now. Similar to the rectangle, if I change this to a path, object to path, that changes it and gives it 4 nodes. Now if you see this one, it doesn't do the same thing. I'm just moving that one node. So I can move that around, make a wonky circle. And similar to the rectangle, I can just, while I'm on the node tool, I can click on the line and pull it to curve it in a different way. I can also double click to add a node. So once you get familiar with nodes, you can use, they're very, very powerful. This doesn't look like much of anything, but when you're drawing particular shapes, like say you want to hand trace a drawing or something, the node tool comes in real handy for that. So it's worth it to get to play with it just when it doesn't matter. Okay. Now, let's see. I'm going to show you. I'm going to change this shape to a different color, green. And I'm just going to get rid of all these other things. I'm just clicking on them and pressing delete. And I'll pull both of these shapes over to my canvas. All right, so I've got a wonky green shape and a red square. They both have black outlines. All right, now we're going to look at some of the path operations you can do. So let's overlap these two items. Let's put the green one on top. Right now the green one is behind the square. To get it on top, I can either do Object, Raise, okay, or if it's behind, I can click on it and then use my keyboard. I can do either Page Up to move it one level up, or if I have multiple objects that are all at different levels in my stack, if I want to move it all the way to the top, I press Home. If I want to move it all the way to the bottom, I press End. Okay, I'm going to put that one on top. Now I'm going to select both of these objects. I can either do that by clicking and dragging while I've got the selection tool selected. See, now it's got a dotted box around both of those. They're both selected. If you have like two items that are crowded around with a lot of other things and you only want to select a couple, the easier way is to hold down Shift and click on both of them. If you hold down Shift, it's going to just keep adding things to your selection. Okay, so we've clicked on both of them. Let's union these together. I'm going to go to Path, Union. Okay, it joined both of those objects together into one shape, and they both share the same fill and the same stroke because they are one object now. I can go back and manipulate the colors of these just like I did with my squares and rectangles. I can click on the fill and stroke panel, change the color, or I can go down here and change the colors. Holding down Shift to change the stroke color and not holding anything to choose the fill color. All right, I'm going to do Control Undo to get back to our two separate shapes. I just pressed Control Z like 5 or 6 times. And now we're going to do difference. So difference with union, it doesn't matter which item is on top because it just smushes them both together into one thing. With difference, it does matter. The object that's on top is going to subtract out of the object that is behind. So again, hold down Shift and select both of those. My green object is on top. I do Path, Difference. Okay, see, it cut out where the green object was and just left me the rectangle. I can reverse the order of these. If I click on the red square, I can do Page Up or Home. Now my red square is on top. If I select both of them and do Path, Difference, now it cut the square out of the circle. These are really handy when you're drawing things. Now let's say that I'm going to move the green shape on top again by pressing Home. Let's say I want to cut a piece out of the red square, but I still want to have this shape. If you notice when I do that, it gets rid of the green shape that I was using to subtract. So if I want to keep that shape, I want both of them, I can just duplicate it. Control D, duplicates. It doesn't look like it did anything because whenever you duplicate an object, it puts it exactly on top. So now I've got two of my green objects. Now I select one of the green objects and hold down Shift and select the green square and do Path Difference. Okay, it doesn't look like it did anything, but if I pull that square out of the way, you can see it did cut that out. And this is our duplicate that we didn't do anything with, so that's still there. All right, I'm undoing to get back where I was, and I'll show you a couple of other path operations. For the next one, I'm going to take both of these objects, I've selected both, and over on my fill panel, I'm going to reduce the opacity of both of them so they're a little bit transparent. I've put the opacity down to about 63%. Okay, now I'm going to do Path Intersection, and what that will do is it will only keep the parts of those two objects that are intersecting with each other. So again, hold down Shift to select both and do path intersection. All right, it only kept that little bit that was there. It maintained the transparency that I had reduced, but I can just easily pull that back up. Okay, back to where we were. I'll just leave them transparent for now. Another path operation that comes in handy is to cut path. Now, let's see. I'm just going to do it like this. My green object is on top. Path, cut path. Okay. When it does that, it gets rid of the fill, all right? But it has cut that path or stroke into two different parts, okay? I could fill in a path that's cut. It just kind of joins the two. It kind of draws a line between the wherever the path ends, all right? If I was to click on this, you can see here are the nodes, and I can move that path. This actually isn't a path, so I can't adjust that. Okay, Control Z to go back where I was. All right, then again, if I was to put the square on top, I selected it and pressed Home. Now I'll click and select both and do Path, Cut Path. Now you see it used the square, the thing that was on top, to cut the path that was underneath. Same thing. Okay. Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to open up, let's see, Cricut Design Space. And I'm going to show you the difference between strokes and objects. Because I mentioned in the previous one that if you draw an object that has a stroke around it, that stroke is not going to come into Inkscape. All right. And also I'm going to just, click on the Bezier tool, and I'm just going to click once and click again, double click to make a straight line. I'll go over the Bezier tool in more detail later, but for now just click, click, double click to make a straight line. I'm going to get rid of these things. I'm going to save this now. Control Shift A to save. I'm sorry, Control Shift S. And I'm going to save that as Beginner Canvas 2. Save. And now I'm going to go to Cricut. My design space is open. I'm going to upload. Click on Upload Image, Browse. And here is my file, Beginner Canvas 2. Open. Okay, now you see I've got my two lines and my rectangle there. I'll save that. And now I'm going to insert that image into my Design Space canvas. All right, you can see I've got my two lines here and my red rectangle. I'm going to ungroup those. Now, just to demonstrate this, what these are, you might think that this would cut out a long skinny piece, but it's not going to. It's actually just going to cut a straight line. So I'm going to select those and change the color to a lighter color so that we can see them on the print screen. And this, it looks like it has a black line around it. That's not going to, it's only just going to cut a rectangle. Okay, so if I go to the Make It screen, so here is my two lines. What my Cricut would do is it would just take that and the blade would drop down right here at the beginning and cut to the end, and then it would stop. It would just cut a line in the paper, and then here it would just drop the blade down and cut to this point and then stop. Okay, that's what a stroke is to Design Space. It is just a single cut line. Whereas if I look at the rectangle, it's going to drop the blade around one of the sides, cut all the way around it, and finish, and then you will have an object that is cut out. Okay, so that is the difference between how Design Space sees strokes versus shapes. If I double click on this one to show you the nodes, you can see that just has one node on each side. And this is just basically, if you're thinking of this in terms of Design Space, this is telling the Cricut blade to cut from here to here in a straight line. Whereas if I click on the rectangle, I'll change it to a path just for this demonstration, that is telling the Cricut blade to cut from this path to this path, from this node to this node, to this node, to this node, to this node, and it's going to cut out a shape. It's not this Cricut doesn't care if it has a 10 pixel stroke or a 1 pixel stroke or no stroke at all, it's going to cut exactly the same way. This, let me duplicate it, Control D to duplicate. I'll hold down Shift and click the X to get rid of the stroke on that one. This rectangle will cut exactly the same as this rectangle in Design Space. Okay, that's just the point I want to make, because a lot of people tend to get confused. They're like, this stroke, why is it not showing up on Design Space? It just doesn't, because Design Space doesn't have it doesn't read the stroke the same as Inkscape does. So, okay, I think that's where I will end this lesson. And again, let me know if anything doesn't make sense. I'll answer questions and make explanatory videos. If anybody has a question, just